let's go, I'm going, Okay, yeah, so I'm already, like, we're getting hyped about the red cards in Dominaria United. A color I'm quite fond of, usually red. Or it's really like a color that, like, I wish that I'm fond of, but, like, actually, like, I kind of like green cards, you know what I mean? It's sort of it's a bit of a sitch, you know? I mean, it's a bit of a, hard personal struggle for me. Anyways, a little overview that I sort of gave at the start of these that's never the same twice is that this is a limited card review preview for the set. I'm trying to grade the cards so that I know how good I am at predicting whether the cards are good or not. I like watching these things, so I figured it'd make some basically also for me, and also it keeps me accountable. So, all that being said, there's like a little video explaining how I do tier list stuff. There's 4 tiers that I put cards into. Tier 1 is the best, Tier 4 is the worst. But if you want to learn more about that, go over to that video about it. So, now we're going to get into the red cards. First up, Molduvian Berserker, and we're starting off hot. It's 2 mana for a 1/3 with Enlist. When it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. That ability's good. So like tier 4 is probably a little harsh for this card. It's probably harsh. It's probably like at its worst case, it's probably tier 3. But it really is a 3 mana 1/3. You know what I mean? Like, so here's things that are good about it. Maybe the Enlist is big. So I am sort of seeing this being hard to block, right? Like, if you have a 3/3 on board, and your opponent makes this into a 3/3, you just trade, and then they hit you in the face for 3. That's good, but you've tapped out, again, with Enlist, you have to tap your other stuff to make this thing good. Dealing 1 damage to something when this dies is not worth it. And it doesn't block. This thing never blocks, ever. It doesn't block. So, cards that don't block tend to be pretty bad. So that's where I'm starting with this. Next, Chaotic Transformation. It's 6 mana for a thing that exiles a bunch of your opponent's stuff, and then they get to go search up a bunch of stuff from the library. This is not a limited mechanic. It's way too expensive. It doesn't really do anything. Don't worry about this card in limited. It's not good. Not worried about getting this one wrong. Next, Coalition Warbrute. 4 mana, 3/4, Enlist Trample. Now this is maybe the best. This is maybe the good Enlist card at common. Because it is big, it does have trample, it has 4 toughness, which matters a lot. Toughness on Enlist cards, and the trample matters with Enlist because you're getting that damage through. It's just hard to like chump. You can't really chump block it. You have to like put stuff in front of it. So I think this card is actually going to be fine. I think this actually may be okay. Now, in aggressive decks, do you really want to be playing a 4 mana 3/4 with trample? Probably not. Something you're especially fond of, but I don't know. I think it can maybe get the job done. I don't think it's going to be incredible. I think it's going to be playable, though. Next, the Red Defiler. 2 red for a 4/4 with First Strike. Has the Defiler text on it, where you can basically pay Phyrexian mana for your red spells. When you cast a permanent spell, it deals 1 damage to any target. I think this is probably still better than the black one, but they're all good, so I wouldn't worry about that. Sorry, I apologize for the coughing on my editing skills. Not good enough for me to edit stuff like that out. So also this is mostly for me. So if you like want to leave, that's also okay. Just a life chronicling situation. Next, Dragon Whelp. It's apparently a reprint from like 2002 or something. 4 mana, 2/3 flyer. Generally not especially great rate, especially because you're paying double red. You can fire breathing it, but if you fire breathing it too much, it dies. Not super interested in this. Really. I know the downside's there because it's a reprint, but like, don't really need the downside to be there. Could just have fire breathing and it probably would have been fine. Yeah, it's all right. Next, Elder Dragon War. 2 red for a read-ahead saga. First part is it deals 2 damage to each creature and each opponent. Discard any. The second thing is you can discard any of your cards. Draw many cards, and the third thing is you can make a 4/4 dragon with flying. So first of all, this should be in every red commander deck because otherwise it would be illegal. That would be illegal for it not to be in the commander decks because if it's got the name of the format in it, you have to have it in your deck. That's my rule. Aside from the memes here, I think this is another thing where read ahead really does sort of get you there, because sometimes the first thing is completely irrelevant. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes the second thing is really irrelevant. Sometimes it's really good, and sometimes you just want a 4/4. This just seems great. The versatility is really nice on the read ahead here. I really do like it a lot. So that's my take on this card. It's really good. It's really versatile. If you just pay 4 mana for a 4/4 flyer, you're happy. You're living up. So yeah. Next, Electric Static Infirmary. 1 red, 1/2 trample. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Man. Speaking of prowess, man, this is prowess on steroids. Just putting +1/+1 counters on this thing. This is probably an absolute monster, I would think. Because like, you just cast 1 instant or sorcery spell, and it's a 2/3 for 2. Like, if you play this on turn 2, and then you play an instant or sorcery spell on turn 3, it's like, oh, okay, well now you're just absolutely, like, going off. And there's Lightning Strike and another card that's functionally Bolt, but is not quite as good because it doesn't go face, really. As Bolt in this set. So there's a couple of cheap instants and sorceries that you want to be casting in red. I think this is great. You put 2 of these on the battlefield and your opponent's just sitting there like, what on earth? What on earth am I supposed to do? Block them? Under no circumstances, you know? So this thing's great. Next, Fires of Victory. 1 in red, instant. Kicker for 2 and a blue. If this spell is kicked, you draw a card. Fires of Victory deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of cards in your hand. So it's probably most of the time going to deal 2, 3, or 4 damage. When you want to be doing damage. In the late game, it's kind of bad, but you can draw a card. But I think most of the time you're probably going to be happy with what this does. I think it's going to generally be worse than Lightning Strike, because Lightning Strike always deals 3, and you probably just would rather have that consistency than sometimes being able to deal 4. But I think you're going to put this in your deck. I don't see why you wouldn't run it. Even like just a regular red deck, I don't think you need to have the kicker here. It's nice, but it's not required. Next, Flowstone Infusion. Single red mana instant, target creature gets +2/-2 until end of turn. It is kind of a shock effect. Doesn't go directly to face, which is pretty bad. I think you would probably rather have shock than this in pretty much every single scenario, unless they put Toski into this set somehow. Basically, I mean, there is 1 indestructible trick in white and 1 in black, but this doesn't really that's not. I wouldn't worry about this blowing those things. You can already just blow those things out if you have. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I don't really think there's much here, to be honest with you. I think it's kind of just fine. I don't know why I'm durdling on here. It's kind of just a shock mostly. Next, Flowstone Kavu. 2 and a red for 2/3 menace. It gets +1/-1 until end of turn. If you do what is it called? Water bending, but it's fire, but it's 1 red or something. It's Weird Menace. I've categorized it as Weird Menace, and Weird Menace gets to be in tier 3. That's where it gets to go. That's sort of what Weird Menace does. I don't really love. I think this type of card generally isn't great. Next, Furious Bellow. One in a red, target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. You scry 1. Generally, these tricks aren't especially great. 2 mana is kind of a lot. +3 is a lot, and scry does give you some things, but I think this is probably still just a little too pricey to be incredibly good. Next to Hulu Amplifier. 2 mana, 1/2. Enters the battlefield. If it was kicked, return target creature and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Yeah, so this is just like way worse than Psionic Pickpocket from SNC in like every possible way. So I'm gonna put it in tier 4. I think this is really terrible. Even if you have blue mana in your deck, I still don't think it's very good. So I'm out on it. Next, Goblin Picker. 1 in a red for a 2/2. You can discard a card, draw a card. You pay red and tap it to discard and draw. Not good. It's basically just a 2/2. In the late game, it's fine. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, it does stuff. Yeah. Next, Hammerhead. Single red mana. It's an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, target creature can't block this turn. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. I think actually I probably shouldn't put this in tier 4. I think I should move it to tier 3. But because this does do quite a bit of damage. Like it gets in quite a bit of damage. Potentially for 1 mana, with the combination of you having a creature that you want to haste out, which you probably can for just 1 mana. So I don't think this is like terrible. I think it's fine. I'm just a little bit worried about it being kind of meh, that's all. I'm just cautiously pessimistic, as is often the case. Next, Hurler Cyclops. 3 red, 5/4. You can pay 1 colorless to sacrifice another creature, and it deals 1 damage to any target. There are some things that have sacrifice synergy in this set. Not especially many of them. So this effect is probably not that great. You're paying 5 mana for a 5/4, so I'm not super into that. Like it's a cheap sack outlet, but the creature itself is very expensive, which generally isn't an especially great combination. Next, Huntsman Battle Him. 2 in a red. Instant, it deals 4 damage to target creature and Planeswalker. If you kicked it, you gain 4. Kick it for 1 white mana. Seems pretty good to me. Yeah. 3 mana deal 4 instant speed seems really good. Like this is sort of continuing my theme. Like the removal in this set just seems very efficient. Like surprisingly like efficient removal in this set compared to like previous sets recently where the removal's kind of just been not very efficient at all. So curious to see what kind of format that makes because we haven't had a set with removal be like especially great in a long time. So I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by it. I guess the last one would have been Vow maybe. So next, Enthrall to the Pit. 3 in a red for a active treason. If you kick it for 2 in a black, you sacrifice the creature at the end of the turn that you take control of it. So it sort of does its own active treason-y thing where you want to sacrifice your thing, but it costs you 7 mana to do it. Which is probably too much mana for you to be doing that. But if you have cheap sack outlets, 4 mana for these tends to be too much. So I think this 4 mana is going to be too much. Again. Next, Gias, Fiery Negotiator, 2 red for a 4 mana for a Planeswalker, a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. It can create a monk token for the +1. It can draw you cards for -1. I guess you can only play 1 of the cards this turn. -2, you can deal damage to a creature equal to the number of creatures you're attacking with this turn. Yeah, it's just good. Basically, you just make 1/1s with the 1/1s have prowess. It's the only time I think prowess appears in the entire set, which is weird, aside from that other guy who has, like, improved prowess with counters. Doesn't really remove anything, like, from the board, like, that well, without having creatures, but it's fine. I think that it's just probably still just good enough to be tier 1 here. Next, Gias fire an 4 and a red for a sorcery that deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. You scry 1. These are bad. This is not efficient removal. We've moved past it. Yeah, somehow it's like 3 mana to deal 4 and then 5 mana to deal 5. Like, you can see the difference there in terms of how different the efficiency numbers are. And there just isn't that much stuff that this is, like, necessary for. So. Next, Keldon Flame Sage. 2 in a red, enlist 2/3. When it attacks, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is its power. You may exile instant or sorcery card. Mana value X or less from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. You may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. There aren't really instants of sorceries that you're going to have in your deck that cost more than like 4. So if you can get this to 4, you can cast pretty much anything it hits. Now it does have to hit something, which means you have to be running, let's say probably like half instants, like 10 instants or so. Instants or sorceries in your deck, so like 10 instants, 10 creatures or something. And then you could get there. Then you're maybe getting there. But you need creatures to enlist this as kind of attention. Like, you need stuff to actually enlist it to make it big to attack. This may not actually be tier 1. It might actually be like tier 2 or 3. I can't tell if you may cast this card, exile card without paying its mana cost is part of this card's ability, or if it's part of the ability of the effect. Like, if this dies, I think if this dies, you still get to cast it. I'm pretty sure because of the way it looks like it's worded, but it's possible that that's not true. I'm pretty sure that's how this one works. It varies from card to card on how that works. So, next, Keldon Strike Team. 2 in a red. 3/1 human warrior. Oh man, Spencer read the types. I know. I read the types. I know. I'm really. You got me. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. You can kick it for 1 on a white. And as long as it enters the battlefield this turn, creatures you control have haste. So I think the important thing to note about this card is that it can be used to enlist immediately because it has haste, which makes your 2-drop enlist creatures, of which there's only very few, good. Like, if you were to go white 2-drop rare into this, you'd be like, oh, I'm just, like, getting beat for 5 now. Right. So, it's a situation. This thing's a situation. I think this is good, actually. It's fine. It's like I said, tier 3. Like, it is only have 1 toughness, and it does. I think the kicker across is something you're actually going to want to be doing with this card a decent percentage of the time if you can swing it, because you do, like, those tokens do help. So, next, Lightning Strike. 2 in a red, deal 3 to anything. See no reason for this to be anywhere other than tier 2. It's just good. It's above average card, not a busted card. Not going to win you a game by itself. Just decent. Next, Maria does Outrider. 4 and a red for a 4/4 reach. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to target opponent, equal to the number of basic land types on non-lands you control, which probably is like 3, but maybe 2. 2 or maybe 3. Yeah, no, these type of cards tend to be pretty mediocre to, like, not great. So I think this card's gonna be in that category as well. I just don't see, like, Domain being that good. Next, Molten Monstrosity. It is 8 mana for a 5/5. It costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So the joke, right, is that you can enlist something, attack. If the enlist thing that you attacked with lives, you can then cast this for something for, like, way cheaper. Now, the enlist thing you have to attack with has to live, which means it had to have had a good attack to begin with, which scares me because, like, if there's a 2/2 on the board, the enlist creature probably doesn't have a good attack, and then you're just sad. But I don't know. I think like, it's like, would I trade my 3/3 for an enlist 2/2? Yeah, probably. Like, like you're getting the ability off the battlefield. I don't know. So it's sort of like having good attacks with enlist is something I'm really worried about, and I think is going to happen. Not especially like every single game. Like I don't think that you're going to just have those. So that's my take on this. So it can be hard to cast. Next, Phoenix Chick. 1 mana, 1/1 flying haste. It can't block. That's fine. It whenever you attack with 3 or more creatures, you may pay red. If you do, you can return it from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it just keeps coming back. It's good. I think it's pretty good. Generally, these type of cards are good. You can like discard it early on in the game if you want to like try to draw some other cards and try to do something else. I don't know. I like it. Next, radas. Firebrand. 1 and a red for a 3/1. Red attacks. Target creature defending player controls with power less than it can't block. When it gets +2, you can pay 5 and a red, but it costs 1 to activate for a number of lands with domain. And this card gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You can only do it once though. I think this card's pretty good though. Like it's very aggressive. It enables you to just like if you play this on 2, your opponent, like you're on the play, you play this on 2. Opponent plays a 2/2. The 2/2 can't block this, right? Because you can just attack and then it can't block it, so you just get in for 3. So they have to play something with 3 power to be able to block, or 3. Yeah. Power less. So yeah. So if they play something with 3 power, they can block. But then you're like trading for something with 3 power, which tends to be pretty good. So I think this is just a good aggressive card. Next, Rundvent Hoardmaster. 1 red for a 1/1 Goblin Lord. It gets all your goblins +1/+1. Obviously, that's what lords do. When it or another goblin dies, exile a top card of your library. If it's a goblin, you may cast it until the end of your next turn. No, this is unplayable. There aren't enough goblins, so don't play it. Next, Shivan Devastator. X and a red for 0/0. Flying haste, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you go Vorinclex into this, you win the game. Basically. Gotta get me a Vorinclex for my cube. That's unrelated, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's flexible. Flying haste, you can sort of do it whenever you need. It's the rate is always kind of bad, like kind of mediocre, but like you're always just gonna be fine making a big flying haste later on in the game, or like if you wanted to cast this on like turn 4, you could just make a 3/3 flying haste, and I think that's probably just good enough, and you're happy with it. It leads to a lot of decisions, which actually I think is a cool way to do it. Next, Smash to Dust. 1 in red. You can either it's a sorcery. You can either destroy target artifact, target creature with defender, or you can deal 1 damage to all your opponent's creatures. Which I think all of these modes are kind of meh. Yeah, it deals with tokens, but defender I don't think is going to be like a scourge of the meta, so I wouldn't be worried about that. And I don't think there's very many good artifacts either, so I think this is going to be pretty bad. Sprouting Goblin, 1 and a red for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it has kicker for 1 single green mana. You can search the library for a land card with the basic land type, reveal it and put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So I think this actually is very interesting, because I think in other formats it works with triomes, because it will work with the 2 type lands as well. And you can pay red and sacrifice land and tap this and draw a card. So this thing seems pretty good to me. Like, it gets you lands early. It can cash your lands into, like, cards in late game, which is definitely good. Yeah, so I think this thing's just good. I think it's like a 2 mana 2/2 early is not, like, unplayably bad. It does have abilities, and it does do other stuff. So that's, yeah, I think this is fine. Next, dubious monarch. 2 and a red for a goblin, 2/2. It has haste. When it attacks, create a 1/1 goblin that's tapped and attacking. You basically it has escape for 3 in a red, and you exile 4 other cards from your graveyard to return it from the graveyard to the battlefield, and it has haste and can attack again. So it's just really good. It just makes a bunch of goblins and attacks your opponent. So next, temporal firestorm. 3 red for as sorcery. Choose up to X creatures and/or planeswalkers, where X is the number of times the spell was kicked. Now you can kick with either 1 in a white or 1 in a blue, which makes this really expensive. And you deal 5 damage to each creature and planeswalker. And the spell stuff that's kicked gets phased out, so it doesn't get dealt damage. But you can't like attack with it this turn either, because you phased it out. So you can't like hit your opponent for 10 after you blow up all their stuff. That doesn't work. You do get left with a big board presence, but I don't know. These 10 effects are fine. Like burn down the house. I think this is just way worse than burn down the house. And Midnight Hunt. Burn down the house wasn't even that wasn't even that good. Now part of that was red was bad, but burn down the house wasn't even that much of a house. Next, Thrill of Possibility. It's a reprint. 1 in a red. Instant as an additional cost to cast the spell. You discard a card. And you draw 2. This card's kind of always just mediocre. It generally tends not to be very good. So, next is Twinferno. It's a 2-minute instant, 1 in a red. You can either copy your next instant or sorcery spell and choose new targets for it, or a target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. So, generally the double strike type of thing is bad, and the copy trigger instant thing is bad, but together maybe they're okay. But I am unsure for now whether or not that's the case. So we're just gonna put it in tier 3 and say it's gonna be not great for now. I could always move up later. Next, Yoshino Outrider, single red for a 1/1 haste. It can be kicked for 2 in the green. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 2 in a red to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. You can do that as many times as you want. This just seems like really good. This seems like a great 1-drop. Like it just gets in, and later on it's like a 4-mana, 4/4 3/3 haste, which is fine. And then you can pump it. I don't know. It seems good. It's really good to me. It's really annoying to deal with. Next, Warhost Frenzy. 2 in a red, instant. Be kicked for 1 black. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. If this spell is kicked, whenever a creature you control dies this turn, draw a card. These type of cards are really bad. I don't think kicker makes it any better, so no. Next, Diabam Steel Crusher. 1 in a red, 2/2 enlist. And you can enlist it, and then you can also sacrifice it to destroy target artifact. There aren't that many good artifacts at all. The enlist part doesn't seem especially great to me. So I think it's kind of just like a 2/2 most of the time. And the last card in red is Yoshi Declares War. 1 in a red, read ahead saga. It makes an 0/2 Thopter at stage 1. You can tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. You can deal that much damage to target creature or planeswalker, and then up to 1 target artifact you control becomes a creature with a base power toughness 4/4. No thanks. No thank you. You just don't have enough artifacts to make this work. There's no like treasures or anything in the set to enable it. No, just not really very good. And with that note, that's the end of red here. I don't have much else to say. These are the red cards. Dominaria. We'll see if it bounces back from its poor showing in HBG. People will tell you that it's a good color in HBG. It's not. It's simply, especially not after the rebalance, has really sort of fallen to be the worst color. So we'll see if it can rebound stronger. It's got two good removal spells, which generally is fine. So, all right, that's it. Thanks for sticking around. If you did.